Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to Hump Day. I believe it is Hump Day, so I trust all of us are well. And yes, as I go through the motions here and mute this so that I don't hear myself coming and going, because that's a strange reality, but I think many of us live this. Welcome, everyone. Let me just say, favor be upon us all. Nothing missing, nothing broken. You speak it, you can claim it, and it will come and claim you. So welcome. Thank you, all the moderators, all of the folks in the chat room. I have a really a special guest. I'm really looking forward to this. You've seen him in the chat room and no doubt have interacted. And this is exciting because Brandon, and who is my guest. Hello, Brandon. How are you doing?
Doing great, Wayne. How are you today?
Any better, I would be guilty, but I was never that innocent. Never wanted to be. Brandon, I am excited to have you on because you really do represent what will be the next generation. By the time you take your position, if we're still around, I think some form will be. My generation will have passed, and you are about two torches down the line. So 25 years of age, fantastic. I'm honored, number one, to have you on. And the fact that you even listen, I think that's cool. It shows that spirituality doesn't know chronological age at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really cool because someone like yourself has been teaching people and educating people for such a long time. And people got to realize that that's tremendous value, that every single day you're doing a live stream at 11 a.m. my time, and for an hour and teaching people what you know, because like you said, passing the torch, I think that that's very important, because what good is having all of the answers or the information or things like that, or even the money in the world, right? If other people don't share some of that experience with you. So it's really cool what you're doing. And same thing with the Soul Tribe. It kind of reminds me of the Hexakin community and things like that, where it's a tight-knit community. There's a lot of strength and power behind it, and it really is something that's evolving and kind of forming every single day.
I think it's evolving on many different fronts, not only with this group here, but as you said, with the communities you have. And there are many other extraneous communities that are associated with this group as well.
Well, that's the beautiful thing with the internet, we can, connect and share ideas and learn from each other.
Think about back in the 1800s, what did they actually have? Your social group was you, the farm animals. And now if you lived in the city, it may be a little bit more, but yeah. So, and it's one of the best things that we can use the internet for. It's used for such devious purposes, that we can actually add a little bit of good. That's the way I look at it. And so we're going to be talking about wealth today, because as I sit here, and you and I were talking prior to we went live, my background is in payment. Was fortunate to be, my company was the first company we successfully integrated a credit card terminal to a restaurant point of sale enterprise system, and which is the whole back office. In fact, Brandon, I went into my archives, and actually, so everyone could see, this is what the first pay at the table credit card terminal looked like. We had Veriphones, and we also had the Israeli company, Litman, with their, these were, now, of course, we made the breakthrough in 2004. So I look back and realize it's almost 20-year technology.
Sure.
But what people don't realize is that there was a time where payment was not transacted through a Wi-Fi connection. There's a lot to that. And I was part of we were pushing Veriphone's engineers way beyond their capacity. And when we did the first Wi-Fi transaction, which was actually in a restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, it shocked the whole payment world. So seeing where payment has come as I've seen it evolved, and then I invented the first nonprofit mobile app. There was no mobile app. Mine was the first. How did I do that? So cool. Well, it was because the Visa and MasterCard used our technology that we connected to do pay at the table at, of all places, California Pizza Kitchen, right off of Sunset Boulevard, right there in LA, was where the first pay at the table transaction was commercially done. And they wanted to know how we made the connection here. And eventually it's what we now have, mobile payment. And the evolution of mobile payment has now also evolved into what we call the cryptocurrencies, of which you are becoming very much familiar. I was at the first Money 2020 and went back again. This is where, I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. These, yeah. And you think about it, this was 2012. This was 2011, where Bitcoin was introduced to us, the folks in the payment industry. And I was actually in the meeting that day, and there were 1,001 questions, how do you get involved? And the thing about it is, many of us kick ourselves in the ass because we could have gotten involved. Are you ready for this? For $5,000.
Yep.
Today, we would have been multi-hundredaire millionaires. So, yeah. And today we come into where cryptocurrency is becoming, you have governments now, they're leaving the fiat system, and which I don't think is a good, because they're bringing their garbage with us. And then I look at your generation. You're a millionaire. You got involved very early in the understanding, and you're with your group is Hex. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's really cool that you mentioned kind of some of the innovation that you have had, right, and kind of where the system is currently today. And so the founder of Hex is Richard Hart, and from a very early age, he had shown like a lot of signs of success going to like really, really smart people school. He like a member of Mensa back in the day, things like this. And anyway, so successful people kind of developing solutions and innovations to your point, to some of the control. I mean, because that's pretty much a lot of the things in life is control. And a lot of people don't really realize that if you have a different, better system that might have more opportunity, then, hey, it doesn't hurt to kind of learn about some of that new technology. I mean, in one of the interviews and for a documentary that's coming out at the end of the year, one of the ladies kind of used it as an analogy of like the internet super early on, where a lot of people thought, okay, this is just for email, but then you see that it's used for so much more. And so to be able to have decentralized, trustless systems where you don't have to trust man, but you can look at the code itself and kind of trust that code. I think that's a bright future compared to if we didn't have that technology, where we'd be heading.
I love the analogy because I was at a meeting in 1999. It was called Executive Mindshare. Bezos was in there. There were a number of people at the time. And we had that very discussion is, all right, so what is the internet? What do we do with this? E-commerce was just becoming, thought about. And so to make the analogy that where we are now with the numerous ways of which one can get involved into, whether it's the data mining for Bitcoins or etc., it's amazing. It is kind of like the new frontier.
Yeah, well, it's true. And you mentioned kind of being able to have the opportunity, right, of getting into Bitcoin in 2011. It's insane. The system that we have currently, we don't realize some of the potentials for some of these other things that once again are better, because Bitcoin used to be a penny at the time, and it used to be even under a penny, and it used to be free to mine. You could literally just double click an EXE. The founder of Hex, he used to be an early Bitcoin miner too in 2011, but you could mine that for free. And that went from a penny to $69,000, which is 6.9 million fold, and so obviously after 6.9 million fold, it's shown, I mean, now about 14 years later, that that people thought about these certain narratives just as they did with the internet early on, but then the proof is in the pudding, right? The actuality had kind of proved that, okay, there is something here, there is adoption. It's not just a taboo thing anymore. It's something that, you know, a lot of people are getting interested and invested.
Is it, and that's an interesting question, because, you know, I don't usually deal in shows where we talk about money, but here's the thing. One of the things I know of my spiritual background is that, you see, I come out of the name it and claim it. We believed in prosperity. I was taught prosperity from the 70s, which taught me something very early. There are spiritual hierarchies that control money. I was just reading Manly P. Hall's, you know, in one of his books, that there are gnomes, for instance, that control money. They control where the gold is, the diamonds. Those are still the foundations of all transactions. It's still tied to something physical. It's just now we've converted that into a digital domain. And so the way I look at it, if it's early, then there's opportunity for people to begin. They don't need large sums. And by the way, we're not giving financial advice. We're just having a discussion of where the system and where payment is at. But there is opportunity for the individual. And you said something earlier, you have to do a little study, right? You have to learn about what part of payment you're getting into. For me, I actually went to a school called Payments 101.
Yeah.
Learning about the backbone, who controls it. You know, back in the day, it was with First Data, how Visa and MasterCard are all tied into the system. So I know it. I know it very well. I know this as well. There's a lot of assholes that are in that business. I know that. I've had to go to court to protect what, you know, we invented. So it's a cutthroat business. But when I see someone like yourself getting involved in the payment aspects, I said, well, maybe there's hope, because you bring a certain gnosis and enlightenment into the equation. So getting back, so a person can learn your system, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, just hex.com is the website. And that's the really cool thing, is it's just super easy to remember, you know, three-letter dictionary.com domain. But
I like that.
yeah, but it really is kind of like, even though I was born in 96, I definitely use that analogy of the internet early on, because I know people that are, you know, in my family that might be older, right, that used to say like, oh, you know, we don't want to get with the times on, say, smartphones, or, you know, some of these other things. And then eventually they realized, wait, this tech can be used to benefit me, or there's things that's clearly it's not going away. So yeah, as far as the cryptocurrency itself, it's completely decentralized, right? It's permissionless, which I absolutely love, because you know, most places in society that you look at these days do have a lot of control and do have, you know, that grip around your neck. And so to be able to kind of have like self-sustainability and not have to rely on other people, once again, I think is super awesome. And then also, like you mentioned, none of this is financial advice. We're just having a conversation as two friends. But the thing that I love also in life is being able to, like you say, prosperity. And I had a very similar upbringing to, you know, the religious stuff that you talk about as well. And anyways, yeah, it's awesome to see that.
Who was it? Copeland, by the way? I'm just curious. Who was your prosperity?
Oh, yeah, pretty much a lot of the stuff that I've learned.
Yeah, I was going to say probably your parents,
he still
right?
watches him, and he still watches him and things like that. But it really is true. And like the cool thing is too, is like with myself or with the community or someone like Richard Hart, once you kind of have some of that wealth, it really allows you to make some significant changes and in the betterment, right, in the ecosystem or in the world that people want to see, but they might not be able to have that opportunity, right? If you know, if your cup's not overflowing, once again, you can't pour into the other person's cup. So if your cup is overflowing, then you can, and you can do things to get people onboarded or to make it easier, right? Because it really is kind of like you say, when something is early, that's when the most amount of opportunity is there.
It is, and there's always a risk factor in there as well. But I want to let everyone know. So you're 25. You don't have to get up 9 to 5. You don't have to worry about a job because and what you've been able to do is, and I like it. It's sustainable, self-sustainable, and that affords you a lifestyle to where you can pursue more things of what I would call the soul than of the physical body. A job is just being above broke. That's what it's, it's just over broke. And
so true.
And it's true. If you have a job, you're nothing more than chattel. And now I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've paid a price for it. I mean, when you operate with no safety net, when things go wrong, they really go wrong.
Yeah.
But I've always been stronger coming back. So in one aspect, but my point for you is that to me, this represents the ideal lifestyle that most people would like, because I'm gathering you're not going hungry. I love the attire, because that's my type of attire. And it costs money to have that privilege. It's not privilege. It's a luxury, because the privilege can be obtained by anyone. Would you say that? Because you're at 25, what a remarkable position to be in at so early in the curve.
Yeah. Well,
congratulations, by the way. High five, way to do it.
Thanks. Well, yeah. And a lot of people in the Hex community say the same thing as well, where how cool is it that, no one wants to get up at maybe a time that you don't want to, right? Work for a boss that you don't like taking orders from, things like this.
An asshole.
And at the end, And at the end of the day, it's just a means to an end, right? It's an exchange of value of your time, which is freaking precious, right? You're never going to be able to get that back. It's not ever guaranteed the next breath, let alone the next day. But the point is that how cool is it to not have to not necessarily participate, but not have to do that every single day,
to be forced.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
And with the inflation these days, you're getting paid a couple of shekels, and then everything else is going up more expensive. I mean, you mentioned with Trina yesterday, as far as like the farmers and the cost of diesel and the actual there's so much when it comes to what's going on in the world. That's just once again, it's getting tighter around the neck. And so if there is no solution, then it's like, man, it really is glim, and it really is not that hopeful. But there are solutions. There are people that are working on making the world a better place, instead of using all of that wealth, power, and control to, once again, force.
What are you doing with the wealth? Because that's a good question. I mean, you can get like Jack Dorsey. I met Jack at South by Southwest in 2006, and I look at his life now, and Jack suffers from prosperity guilt. He's accelerated to the point where now he's living a subsistence lifestyle, minimalist, because what people don't understand about wealth. It's nice to have, but it comes with a cost and a responsibility. Have you found that so far in your young life?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, because if someone does have, you're right. If someone does have the means, and someone is kind of just living for themselves per se, and not necessarily giving back to the thing that kind of had fed you and things like that, then obviously it might kind of be like a lost opportunity versus someone that is onboarding people into I guess just a system and a product that's better. And so, yeah, I mean, I've gotten in probably now hundreds of people into a better solution, something that they can not necessarily, it's, sometimes people think linearly, where it's like, oh, I have to do all of this thing or all of the other thing. And it's like, it's not true. You can always learn a little bit with the learning curve of, hey, how something works, try it out a little bit and see if it's something that, I don't know, is going to work for you, if it's successful, things like that. As far as what I'm doing, I mean, I'm really supporting a lot of the people in the community itself that are on a daily basis, educating people, giving back. And
I see you a facilitator. You do a great job at it. You really do. And I'm high five for that. tell me, Brandon, how did you get involved? At what age, and how did that door open for you?
Yeah. So it was 5 years ago. I was working for a company, the internet company, CenturyLink, and
Okay. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Bellevue, downtown Bellevue. And
yeah. Old Quest company.
yeah, exactly. And so I've got older brothers, and I've always been able to learn from them and their friends, and always thought like, hey, I can, you can even learn from a homeless person on the street, right? And so
True.
the point is that the
I met Jesus Christ that way.
Yeah, exactly.
I digress. All right, I won't say anything more. I'll let you continue.
No, I love it. So the point is so I had two older coworkers. One of them was kind of just, there, once again, just for a paycheck, things like that. But then the other one, his name is Leon. He was an entrepreneur. He had a few companies, had a shoe shining company, had a jewelry store, sold jewelry, precious metals, etc. And so I was always, since a very young age, I mean, my parents did real estate, and so I never saw them working for other people, right? It was them working for themselves. I was always curious about, how do you self-sustain or like the investing, right? How do I take my paycheck that I'm earning and exchange my time for, and how do I make that grow, or how do I exchange it for assets that'll actually do something instead of just get inflated to death? So the point is that when I was working with Leon, him and I would always talk a whole bunch in between, sales and onboarding new customers and things like that. And so I got into some of the precious metals, right? The gold and the silver, and once again, being able to have tangibility, the physical holding of the asset, I thought was cool versus say, some of the stuff that's traded on paper that, can lead to derivatives. And so long story short, Leon, he would always have because in the CenturyLink, we were in like a showroom. It was like 3 people, including myself, into the showroom. On the television, they had like the stock channel and things like that.
CNBC or
yeah,
Bloomberg.
Yeah. Whichever one it was, I totally don't remember right this second. But the point is there was like a cryptocurrency, like a Bitcoin segment, I think back then about 5 years ago. And so just like with anything else, if I'm curious, I'm going to do my own research, and I'm going to want to learn more because it piqued my curiosity. And especially, it might not be the first time you hear something. It might be the second or third or fourth that you actually, okay, let me see what this is. So long story short, I had heard about Bitcoin, read about Bitcoin, and I was like, hey, let me throw a little bit into it. And it was like $900 at the time, things like that. And so I invested a little bit, and then I totally forgot about it. Like a couple months later go by, and then I hear Bitcoin again on the TV, and I go, oh yeah, I got some of that. And so I go to the exchange that I had bought it from, and it was up like 2.5, 3 times from, the initial amount. It was, everything in life is cycles, and it was on its, positive momentum of the market cycle. And then I said,
the hockey stick.
Like, yeah. I said, whoa, there's something here. And so the point is the space itself, just like with, I don't know, the .com crashes and things like that. It's like that. It's like the 80-20 rule, except it's like 99.9 to like, 0.01 type of deal where there's a lot of, there's a lot of junk out there, but there's also a lot of legitimacy, and there's a lot of people that are innovating and things like this. And so the whole point of the story is, I had followed someone named Richard Hart that was he's a self-help, author, developer, things like this. He's really good with, previous businesses and like successful ventures once again. And he was always talking about Bitcoin and, some of its pros and cons and things like this. And in 2019, he had decided like, hey, I want to, create my own cryptocurrency. And I think that I can do it better, more secure, price appreciation, things like this, where people can, once again, prosper. So I'd been following it for about 5 years, a little bit over 5 years, and just stayed in the space every day. I was super curious. Just as I was in 3rd grade, I had a computer in my room that always made me curious of like surfing the internet, learning. And then same thing with cryptocurrency. I knew that, hey, there's something here. And it worked out.
I would say exceptionally well worked out. So as you begin to get into, because, some of the things about cryptocurrency is, again, no one actually holds physical assets. It's in a digital domain. A lot of trust has to be established between whoever is actually holding the assets, quote unquote. I know there are companies like, I think it's Coinbase, where anyone can go in and you can have as little as $100 and, and allow, I think, in fact, and I'm not promoting this, but I think that when you open an account, they'll actually give you a fraction of a Bitcoin. It's how it works. So, and there's so many new coins coming out. And so, and it really depends on, again, I think, how much traction does it get to with the public? And then what is its, and it's a typical cycle, as you said. There's eventually going to be this merger where I think eventually it's going to be established 2 or 3 primarily central players, and then everyone else will take their position in the tree accordingly. It's worked like that every time in the past where payment is concerned. And now that you've got governments, Biden just signed an executive order. So the United States now has this department that is moving with the Fed in producing a Fed coin. What's your thought on that? Because that begins to, and I guess it's a good discussion. I'd love to get Richard and maybe talk to him about this, if you would. Because what I see happening is that my days in politics, I know, particularly with the senators that I was associated with, they're always thinking of taxes, and they couldn't understand Bitcoin was, well, how does the IRS interfere? I actually sat down with the IRS people, and they didn't understand Bitcoin in the beginning. It was, well, how do we trace, when we don't even have any access? Good point. Their only access is when you make deposits into your account that they now know that you have, and that's how the IRS system works. But so in every one of these past, we've seen it. For instance, I would say in the mobile payment space, you probably would have to say, well, Square did a good job in capitalizing in the 3rd tier markets, the lower margins, higher risk. And then I see companies like Amazon Pay, Google Pay, they're, and PayPal. I mean, I know Peter Thiel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He really is. Real cool guy. So, and again, there was consolidation in the market. Now, the great thing about it is that there is what they call the draw up effect. Even if you're in what we would call a sub-market type platform, typically if it has value to it, that it has traction, it is going to most likely be a candidate for a takeover, a merge. So what's your feeling on this? Do you think that with the Fed coming in, and it's going to cause some ripples? And then 2, I guess the second question, do you see eventual consolidation where you're at?
So you're right about kind of like central bank digital currencies or Fed coin, things like that. And honestly, it is another form of, once again, consolidation of power, control, and it really is kind of programmable money in a scary freaking dystopian way. I tell you what, because that's why I'm such a fan of freedom, of sovereignty, things like this, human rights, right? Because the point is that,
oh, you're one of those.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but it's literally, few of us these days, I swear.
True.
But if you don't get ahead of the curve and you don't kind of innovate with what's coming down the pike, then you all of a sudden you can find yourself in a very messy situation, with the control and things like that. The point is to kind of answer your question. So there's just like with Bitcoin, right? The proof of concept, 14 years later, okay, it's shown legitimacy, 6.9 million times return. It's shown legitimacy. But what you have is you're going to have so that's kind of like the centralized system. And then you've got like legitimate, like cryptocurrency, which is, sure, as you mentioned with Coinbase, sure, they can have, their custodians.
Yeah.
They can have
that's what they are. In fact,
like
they are. And there's many of them like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can also have, so you can take that custodianship that you're giving them, and then you can also take that into your own possession as well, where like people say that, in crypto, you don't have the physical coins, et cetera, and things like this, but you do have that actual control of hey, I can send to someone without the permission of a counterparty. It's, peer to
Right.
peer. And so what I see in this, what I see in the future is, as kind of more control and, yeah, things like that, consolidation of power kind of happens, people are going to want to have alternatives and other solutions. And once again, what a dark future it would be if we didn't kind of have some of these things. Because literally, if you say that, oh, you have a certain political belief, or oh, maybe you're of a certain religion and things like that, well, they can choose with the central bank digital currencies, okay, maybe this person can't eat here, or maybe this person, kind of just the control of like where you can spend your money and where you can, transact and interact. And I think that's a pretty gross future. But once again, it's allowing people that were already going into this digital world, like, right? Like, how many times are people, using phone applications and things like this to transmit value versus, say, physical fiat and things. And so you're going to have people that, kind of, as the control consolidates, okay, maybe there's this other thing, this Bitcoin or this Hex or Pulse chain, things like this, that allow a separate network compared to, say, the Visas, the MasterCards, things like that. So it's just,
And
like,
I see it as well as that it's a Wild West situation right now, and that's hard to control. I was a consultant with the Federal Reserve, and the problem is that when my time, I was primarily a consultant for pay at the table, the conversion of debit card to credit card. Back in the day, we didn't know, was the consumer going to adapt more to a debit card? And it was, today we don't think anything about it, but people don't understand that these processes in the very beginning were pretty long and drawn out.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've said, now here we are a decade later into the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. We in fact, that's what I've seen it. We've emerged from the concept of a coin to now a whole platform, a platform that has many different other options, as you were saying. And because there is no regulation, it's basically self-regulated for the most part. There is a tremendous opportunity. It's no doubt about it, because eventually consolidation and control is going to come. The feds are not going to allow this to continue, where people such as yourself, they don't like the idea that a 25-year-old that can make an investment that covers the inflation factor and still allows you to achieve your goals. That you see, that's troubling, because that makes you much more sovereign.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
you're definitely right that even if, because you have what's called decentralized finance, they call it DeFi, with things like, like you mentioned, it's almost kind of like the internet itself, where now you've got programs and applications, but you're right, where even if, because things like Hex is just a smart contract with programmable yield. It's like having a Bitcoin miner if you stake it, as opposed to using physical electricity. But that thing is immutable. So if someone wanted to shut it off, things like this, they wouldn't be able to. But you're definitely right, where that control comes is the endpoints, right? Is the Coinbase, when you go back to cash out, or some of these other things. But what you can definitely have is, nowadays, with smart contracts, the code itself that's been audited, that's been proven, right? You can, once again, I think it's really cool, as as a citizen, as someone that loves freedom, once again, to not have to rely upon one person controlling a whole mass, or being able to ask permission. It's just a smart contract that you can interact with if you want to or not, and be able to exchange value, and be able to pretty much have like a kind of what you have in the traditional finance system, but then on, say, those decentralized platforms and those decentralized options.
There's another point to this as well, because if you look at the fiat currency, you can take a dollar bill. Now, the dollar bill is worth just a little over a penny at the penny point 10, I think. Then you factor in inflation, which is really biting a lot of people. We're all seeing it. And imagine now that you have an ability in which is keeping not only pace with inflation, but it continues to increase in value. I would take that over a fiat currency any day. Now, I may have to use that currency in order to do transactions, both, in a public and even to a private. But if I know that you and I are connected into a platform, sharing, for instance, I'm assuming on the cryptocurrency, whatever we're on platform, you and I can share. We can send each other the financial benefit of that. Now, eventually it's going to hit into an account.
Yep.
I keep on saying I was at one time in my career, we were actually going to start our own bank, and you can actually do that. And I guess that's the question, that I look as the evolution of the crypto evolution continues, is that, okay, so are we going to see consolidation where currencies can actually be exchanged outside the central bank? Talk to Richard about that, because that we were having these discussions 6, 7, 8 years ago, was how you can do that. And I mean, the other thing too, where you have it in cryptocurrency, the other thing, I worked with the FBI on this and money laundering. That, and I can tell you, it was a big concern when I was involved, and it still is. I mean, if you got basically a funnel coming in with no one really auditing the funnel, then anyway.
Right. Well, yeah, that is the thing about, right, the internet or a blockchain, things like this, that when you are signing up on an exchange, you're doing the KYC, the AML, right? For when you're actually signing that up, and even if it is going to a wallet,
KYC is know your customer, folks, by the way. You have to
your ID and things like that, and it's similar to, say, I don't know, just as you would with, say, your stockbroker and things like that. They don't just let you kind of privately do so. But the point is in a, there's a little bit better of a solution, as you mentioned, being able to outpace inflation, and as opposed to just keeping up with it, man, because once again, it's kind of sad and disgusting to see once you kind of have that understanding. And this is what allowed me to really have a grasp of hacks, or get into crypto and understand why it was so important. Because when you are just working more and more and more, because I was working overtime and things like this just to kind of keep up, and now it's even worse, because you go to the grocery store and things are more expensive. And so the cool thing about the crypto itself, people say like, oh, what can you do with it and things like that. Well, you can sell it for the dollar or whatever, whatever thing
you can convert it into hard currency, what you would say.
Yeah. So it's just kind of understanding, assets versus, liabilities, or just earning a paycheck and spending it every week, and, not having anything residual. It's nice to be able to have an asset. Like, I know a lot of the people that are in our community were big into real estate and big into some sort of, passive income or things like this. And so this just allows you to do so without a whole bunch of the overhead, without, calls in the middle of the night to fix the plumbing and things like that. So it's cool that there's.
And then when the bubble hits, you're going, oh crap, I thought it was like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So and I know that a lot of people here, because like, again, we deal in the spiritual aspect of many things, but what I do know is that everything is controlled in the spiritual realm, and we see it here. And money is, again, I used to teach a class on this. If you go back 10,000 years and you see the evolution of money, it's always been associated with a god of some sort, some deity. And it led me to, when I knew you were coming on, and I was doing some searching, and I haven't found anyone even approaching this. So who would be the demigod or the spiritual goddess or god that would control this aspect of wealth? Because this is what we're talking about. When you're making common people who don't have the pedigree, the bloodline, nor the education, right, that are becoming multimillionaires, 100 millionaires, very early in life, there is an aspect to this that you have to say, all right, so what's happening? So have you thought about that? If you see the industry, who would you, I can't find any research on it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that's what's so interesting about, and I've once again been following you for such a long time, and as someone that grew up in religion, I always had questions and things like that. But I think it really comes, yeah. But I think it comes down to the egregore point that you kind of mentioned, where like, and I always kind of, even though I didn't really understand all of the aspects, I kind of understood it as like from a very young age. I would always wear like blank T-shirts and just whether it was a plain blue or plain green or plain black, because I didn't like, supporting some of these logos or supporting some of these things. So I think those are all kind of, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, and you really kind of like blew my current, or my previous paradigm, I should say, with that egregore, that kind of like, I wouldn't say like, oh, just one, demigod or entity type thing. I would think that just like with companies these days, right, there would be kind of like several type of deal. But the cool thing is too, is over time you can kind of see, and you can kind of get a look and feel for what seems more legitimate, and what might be more sinister, right? Because there is always those kind of two aspects of things going on in life. And so to be able to kind of see with discernment, okay, here's what's going on over here, and then over time we can see this community, or we can see this growth and prosperity over here that seems to prove itself over time and be the right way.
As you were talking, I'm writing, because it's just going off in my spirit, is that, all right, so we're about to embark on this group experiment number 2, creating our own egregore. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could actually connect our egregore with the egregore that is obviously over this movement, whatever it is? It's impacting all of humanity. So that makes it pretty powerful in that. And then you're dealing with the payment, the wealth aspect. So are we seeing truly within the ethereal the possibility that there's actually a wealth transfer?
Oh yeah. It's the largest transfer of wealth in history that we've seen. It's so true. And I mean, some people, once again, 2011, or there's this one really big gold bug, Peter Schiff, that had the opportunity to buy a Bitcoin at $1. And so once again, I think 13, 14 years later, he's like, ooh, might have missed the boat on that one. But the point is, but the point is it wasn't just, I mean, and it's not just a one-off. I mean, things like Hex have gone 10,000x from its all-time low of January 5th, 2020 to its all-time high most recently, I think in September, of 56 cents. And then you have consolidation, and then once again a market. Anything in life are cycles, and just going back up to do the next one. And once again with the dot-com bubble or some things, right, some cycle might go up, have a little bit of lifespan, and then just never go back up again. And so what you really have is, over time, if something is showing sustainability and growth and things like this, then okay, here's the one that can actually beat the Amazons, the YouTubes and the Facebooks and things like that, versus not beating that curve, the S curve. But the point that I wanted to say real quick about the egregore thing is that, I forget which stream it was of yours that I was watching about manifesting it and things like this. But I would argue as well that, that through the community and things like that, that with the Soul Tribe and stuff, that there already is one created, et cetera, but it's kind of strengthening, or, the more that you have input of people and in knowledge and things like that, the stronger some of those betterment forces for freedom, right, and sovereignty and things like that can become, versus maybe some of the other more malicious stuff that's trying to suppress people, trying to control people every single move that they make.
That's what I see with poverty. Poverty is a curse. I mean, I hate it. My mother she was under that curse of poverty. And I remember as a kid going hungry, and it's a curse. And how anyone could be, against prosperity, I still, to this day, I don't understand that. But I believe in prosperity, because in this realm, it's anything but prosperous. I mean, and if we could just come into this world as we were meant to, the journey would be a lot, I guess I would say, a lot more fun. But unfortunately, it's not. We're sold immediately. I did the one on the birth certificate. We are chattel. I did the whole thing explaining how the Federal Reserve System looks at us. We're dead men. That's how they consider us. We can't even legally do transactions, if you want to get real technical.
Right.
And so when I see opportunities like this, that where the common person can come in, a family who says, well, we're struggling just to be able to make an ends. Yeah, I get that. But, because what most people say, well, how do I start? You don't have large amounts of money to start.
Right.
Would you say that there is still that opportunity that people, and I don't know,
Sure.
let's just say $1,000.
Right.
Is it beyond that point for people to still get involved?
Oh yeah. I mean, the opportunity, it's prime. I always say this in my live streams that I do every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time that we're so,
and I left the link below.
Oh, nice. That like, because some people, they'll ask me like, Bran, the price of Hex already did 10,000x, and that doesn't include some of the yield and things like this, but they're like, is it too late? And people were thinking the same thing with Bitcoin after a 10x, right? After a 2x that sold all of their Bitcoin at hundreds of thousands, and then later goes to do something that's never been seen before, right? But the point is, it really does come back to what you just touched on, right? The abundance versus prosperity. And man, it's like the teaching people to fish type of thing versus just giving them a fish. I mean, there's a whole ocean of fish, and there's enough for everyone, right? But what you had in the past, or what we kind of see, as we say, like the transfer of wealth and the transfer of power systems, is from, say, something that has been controlled by very few, or even just closed off privately, is now being a little bit more distributed or decentralized, right? Where it's kind of like a level playing field where, not one person has the advantage of the other, but it's all kind of equal. And then, so to answer your question, yeah, there's definitely opportunity. The thing that I would say is, you kind of just have to know where to look, and kind of just have discernment of once again, I mean, obviously things like Amazon and things like that are still doing well, but the opportunity was more so in the 90s.
They've hit their peak already. They can't. They've reached critical mass. I was an investor in JD Uniphase, and then Redback Networks. That's where I did very well when they were laying the fiber. And way back then. But the thing about it is, what I've seen with wealth is that it's cyclical, and it never stops. And it's a matter of connecting, as you did very early with the individual over at Quest into the showroom, planting that seed. And you didn't have, where we came up through the system that, well, you were taught that at first it was the S&Ls, the savings and loans. Well, they went belly up. Then banks are in the process of imploding right now. So you have to begin to say, okay, so where is that safe harbor? Right. And cryptocurrencies, in fact, it was interesting. What city was it? Was it, I want to say it was Chicago or Detroit, but they now have a department in the city government that's mining for Bitcoin. Yeah. Now because immediately when I said, okay, now see that's a huge signal right there. You've got governments in Colorado, you can pay your taxes with Bitcoin or any other type of cryptocurrency. True. So the infrastructure is now being laid. You're a part of that. The Hex system, as I'm seeing it, is part of the integration of that. And well, and you mentioned things like, because Bitcoin itself is not programmable. It's just something that you can, I mean, all it really does is, it's got an inflation, so you can mine it, you can send it, and you can receive it, things like that. And then Ethereum itself is the current network that allows Hex, which is just a smart contract, to once again be the second most popular product at your bank, which is like a certificate of deposit, right? Earning yield and earning, because like when and I've actually got a photo on the wall, but when, every birthday and every Christmas, my grandpa, who's 92, he would give us like a savings bond, and it was like a 15-year savings bond that would go from a $25 principal to, a $50 full maturity. And you could kind of any time in between, cash out some of that maturity. But the point is nowadays, if you try and invest in some of those things, well, 15 years, you're getting a 2x, but the damn inflation is so much that like you're underwater before you even start.
It's negative. Yeah. It's crazy.
Like, oh man. And that's what I like it, because, I'm in that point in life where you begin to look at the options on this. And,
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I talk about this because, payment, it's part of my blood, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can't get it out of you.
Mm.
And as I seen the maturity of the blockchains coming in and now establishing themselves into part of the integrated process, that's telling me it's leading for this rush, because I don't know the capacity of it. I don't know if it has a capacity, but what it does tell me is that things are shifting. And if
Mm.
you're going to get in my opinion, do your homework, but this would be the time to be exploring that.
Right. Well, and that was one thing also that's really cool about the founder of Hex, Richard Hart, is that he developed an amazing product that's immutable. The code is complete, right? It's had 3 audits, things like this. But then the network itself, the substrate that we're on currently, which is Ethereum, it has had, it's had some problems in the past of okay, now there's, because all of it, you're right, is a blockchain and is data storage and things like this, and some of the things that the network was doing was becoming more expensive to transact, right? And
Yeah.
so it shouldn't be if any time you want adoption, you need to make something easier for people, not harder and not more complex, and not 100 different steps. And so he's also creating another chain itself that allows all of these smart contracts. He's actually taking the Ethereum code and beating them to some of the implementations that they've been talking about for about 5 years. And he's creating another coin that's poised to launch mid-May next month, called Pulse Chain. And that's going to allow everyone to once again be able to, develop smart contracts or be able to build, but then not have such an entry level cost. Because right now, once again, what is the barrier to entry, right? Sometimes it might be, $5 for a transaction here and there. Well, it shouldn't be that much if it's just a means to an end. And if it, if you want mass scalability, you need everyone around the world to be able to do it. And as you say, even if you could, does the actual infrastructure, is it there for, the whole world to be onboarded? And honestly, it's not right. You can't, Bitcoin itself only has a certain amount of transactions that you can do within its blockchain and, per day, things like this. And so, yeah, someone like Richard, who's shown previous success in multiple different industries, he's constantly innovating. And I think that that's really cool, because you ask also, like, hey, is there still opportunity? And yes, there definitely is. Sometimes people feel like they missed the boat, but literally Pulse Chain hasn't even launched yet. It's poised to launch, next month, mid-May. And you've just got a lot of people in the space itself that used to be skeptical, which is very healthy. I think it's important to have skepticism, right? But then if someone's actions and someone's results kind of disprove maybe some of that, then maybe it is time to update the paradigm in the worldview versus doubling down on, hey, this can't be possible. It is possible. But then you're also right too, where, the say like Clash of Clans back in the day, like one of those popular applications had like 100 million users per day. Well, that's a huge opportunity of what's the current, system and things like that for people, that are just getting into crypto. Like crypto itself is such a small subsection of what, like, the opportunity is onboarding, people to a more prosperous system.
It's huge. I mean, I don't think most people fathom just how big the system really is. But and as I see this, inflation is driving the need, and when it becomes a need, a necessity, that is always when you're going to see the spike go up. I think that the United States, along with other countries, have shown that their fiscal policies are errant, that they're counterproductive in where productivity is concerned. And importantly, more than if you look at it, if you have a CD, what are you being paid? 1.5%?
Right.
But we've got, year-to-date inflation now exceeding nearly 17%.
Yeah.
I mean, Lynn and I talk about it. We're seeing this as well, is that, well, so where do you shift assets, right? into to where you can begin to say, all right, well, they're going to cover the inflation curve for me. So that basically is a net gain right there alone.
Right.
I mean, if my principle is still sound, where it's not being impacted by the outside inflationary pair, yeah. Now, if I can see a return, an ROI on top of that of, multiplications of X's, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the beautiful thing about what Richard did design with Hex is it really is, you mentioned the opportunity, right? It's kind of like that second opportunity that usually never comes, but it's here. And it's, you mentioned, the opportunity to invest in 2011 and things like that. And Hex really is similar to Bitcoin because you've got once again, the Bitcoin itself, is being mined and things like that. But that's what people are being rewarded for doing the mining and for the difficulty. But for the Hex, it's got that similar aspect, except once again, you kind of like are the Bitcoin miner. You can hold it just like you could with Bitcoin, where once again, you're it's not really doing anything for you, right? You can sell it immediately. You can send it. It's just sitting there stagnant. But then you can also do the staking in Hex, which is really where a lot of the value comes from. I mean, like some of the average APY, and once again, it's like a CD, right? Where I mean, you could stake for a year, and I think earn I think it's like 10% APY on a stake, and it's like you say, where is there? Because there always are solutions. And if there's not, then that's an opportunity to create that as and as Richard did too, the first one to the market, that first mover's advantage. And that's what he had seen was that, okay, crypto's cool, all this other stuff, but it shouldn't be just for making mad gains and stuff. It should be actually utility. What is the usability and the feasibility other than just magic internet money, which is what you used to hear all the time with with crypto. So now we're kind of having similar transitions of, a legitimate, decentralized, more abundant and prosperous system that's kind of similar to some of the traditional systems, and once again, CD and things like that these days, but it's just better. And the opportunity is definitely there, because instead of the banks that have dark patterns and things like this, them kind of behooving from some of their structure, well, now it's the individual, the person within, once again, that level playing field that's benefiting. And so that really allows them to, kind of just be ahead of the curve, because once again, you're seeing it. And I know, people that are really, really, really struggling. And anyways, it's cool to be able to see a solution and be able to see that forest through the trees. Because I think most people that aren't even financially adept, they realize, okay, maybe I wasn't following it before, but now I have no other option because I'm seeing it every damn week at the grocery store, or in this scenario, the gas pump and some of these other things. So it really does pay to, and you mentioned fiat on the side of my wall. I've got a dollar bill. I've got what's it called? The Bolivar from Venezuela. My girlfriend's Venezuelan, so she knows all about that hyperinflation. I've got a Bank of Korean. So a Bank of Korea, I think it's a won. And then I've got a, whatever that one is. And then I've got some pesos, like a 50 peso fiat bill from Mexico when I went 4 years ago. But just the point is that if you, once again, you mentioned with some of the egregores and some of these things, study history, right? Because history shows that all fiats, which is just a representation of, value transformation, all fiat currency in the past has pretty much gone to zero. And the more that you print it and things like this, it's just not sustainable. Go look at, some of these other.
Well, you got Zaire that's printing, $10 billion notes. I mean, and we saw that in World War II as well, where, and the German mark was, buckets full. I mean, wheelbarrows full of money. And you know why? And wow, the hour's gone by. You know why I see value in this from a person where I am in this stage in life is your generation, because that's all the assurance I need. You see, you'll be the impetus that continues to push this change.
Yeah.
And again, by the time you get to where I am, I will be watching over you and making sure that everything's going. But the point is that for me, those are the other unstated indicators, because if I see adaptability with a generation of prime consumer, which you're now in that category, demographic. So that tells me if you've adapted to it, then I need to adapt to it. And if there's a profit in there, there's nothing wrong with profit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's different than, say, like, because some religions with like usury and stuff like that. It's different.
The tithe. I mean, the tithe.
Yeah. Literally. But this, but this is different, because it's not, it's not coming at the back of another person and things like that.
No.
It's it's the same thing that Bitcoin happened, right? It's out of thin air and things like this. And the founder, Richard, he's got a lot of quotes that he's coined and stuff, but like, our made up internet money is better than the government's made up internet money, and they're central banks. And so, yeah, when you have something that's just, we've seen the proof of concept already be successful with, 14 years of the Bitcoin first mover advantages for that. Well, then, okay, now we can take what's been successful and actually build things on top of it to, once again, allow people to have that second option and second opportunity, really. Because otherwise, it's awesome to be able to spread some of that wealth and that control and that power and stuff. Because the very last thing that I'll say, because I know we usually wrap up at 1 hour, is what would a world look like in a future where people didn't have to get up and go work for, what would they be able to do, and what would they be able to create and prosper if they didn't have to have something that was a necessity, and if that was covered more easily, as opposed to just exchanging so many hours that is away from their family, away from their loved ones, that they're never going to get back.
I've said this many times, that if mankind would revolt against the God of this system, and this system goes way back to the Babylonian system, is that every human should have an immediate savings account assigned to them. It should be fully funded by what we would say would be the lifetime initial potential, and then that would be invested for that person. Right now, that amount would be about $10 million at the current rate of inflation. And that would bring that utopia about, Brandon. It would allow humanity to pursue that which humanity, I think, was originally created for.
I agree.
And this may eventually, who knows, may end up being that.
It's surely trying to.
I mean, you got to give it effort. I mean, it's like our egregore. It's still kind of in the ectoplasm. It's starting to take shape. Yeah.
Well, last thing I'll say is once again, there's a pulse chain egregore too, and a pulse hex egregore too, and in some of these things that once again are a force for good. I mean, the Richard Hart, for the actual pulse chain launch itself, he didn't do an ICO or IPO or things like this, but there was $27 million raised for Sen's Foundation, a charity for longevity. Wow. $27 million within 5 days, and that that goes to show you
poor people can't do that kind of stuff.
Right. But yeah, that goes to show you like some of the power of like, okay, people putting their money where their mouth is, trying to make the world a better place, but then also prospering from it. And it really is allowing, you mentioned poor people can't do that stuff. This is allowing, quote unquote, poor people or people just like myself a couple of years ago to be able to dollar cost average in. I mean, hey, maybe smoke, a couple less cigarettes, or maybe go out to the bar, a couple less times, spend, people can do, people can always make an excuse for something, or you can take something and, have an answer for it that's just over time. And so that's what I did. I did like a dollar cost average, even if it was, $25 a week that I could afford, or, $50 a month, whatever it was something going to what I wanted and wanted, for the betterment of my future. And, those assets accumulate.
I learned years ago just that same principle. If I could take $1 a day and put it aside today, you could take $10 and put it aside. And before you know it, it does build up very quickly. I mean, if you put $10 aside within a year's time, you've got nearly $4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your money working for you. So,
and it is. So I've left your link down there, folks. Go over subscribe, watch Brandon's videos. You'll learn. And I guess over there, they can go to hex.com if they want to learn. Folks, it's just the opportunity. We'll get more into this because we're on to some Egregore talking to Egregore.
Yeah.
One thought form sharing with another thought form. Isn't that what intelligence does?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I often wonder when I get over into the spirit realm, I hope I'm still inquisitive, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, well, what the hell's going on here? You know? Brandon, thank you. You're a delightful young man. What just a joy and we'll have to hook up some. Love your energy and the knowledge you have. This is an opportunity. And folks, it tells me, and it should show you, the diversity of this group. We got people like Brandon, 25 years old. We got other people in here that are nearly 80 years old. What a dichotomy of thought and demographics. And Brandon, you bring that youth that, as I say, you know, it's a shame the youth is wasted on the young, but nevertheless,
yeah. When I'm just taking, last thing I'll say is, to the Soul Tribe or to Mexicans, I'm just taking something that we all have with, people that are watching this now, the internet, a cell phone, things like that. People sometimes make excuses that, oh, I love what you're doing, but, I don't know if I'd be able to do this or that or things like that. But, being able to educate people with what you do know, because there's a lot that we don't know. Right. But for someone like yourself, I've learned so much, and within the community, right. And some of these other people. And so the point is that just sharing what you know with other people is really, feeling it's taking this, which is like half empty, and this, which is full, and, kind of mixing the two and making it the best of both worlds. Because I agree, kind of getting back to some of the core infrastructure of why, we're alive and making it the most. Yeah.
Well, you bring me a great deal of hope when I see this. And wow, I have you back on too. I've loved this conversation. And again, I don't talk a lot about my background in this area, but I'm excited. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Great conversation, man.
I've learned so much from you.
Learn from him. This is an opportunity. And none of us are that age where we cannot learn something new, and it might be profitable. All right. Much love to everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Brandon, thank you. Stay with me as we get out, folks. So peace, everyone. Be good. Nina's gone in about 50 minutes on her Hump Day show over there. So check it out. All right.